Hey guys, I have a really simple project. So it started off like this back, I think last summer. And I thought, you know what, I can make something a little bit nicer than what I made out of plywood. So my friend gave me a pine board, roughly about 6 feet long and about 8-9 inches wide. And I was able to make this little bookshelf. It's very simple. It's about 12 inches tall, about 6.5 from front to back. And then the spacing is right around 6.5. You guys can decide what you want. I like having this little small thing right here because I can put it on a dresser, a desk, a table, anywhere, countertop. You can store books on it. If you want to, you can have knickknacks. It's completely up to you. And then also I have a little drawer. That way I can store, whatever I feel like. Now, this will probably go to my children, but this could be a simple, inexpensive gift or something that you use in your home. So with that, let's see how I made this. As you can see, I set my saw to 6.5 inches. So you don't need a very wide piece. In fact, you can use a lot of scraps that you already have if you want to make something similar. Generally, unless I have really long boards that are unwieldy, I like to rip all my boards first and then take them to the miter saw and cross cut them to length from there. It doesn't really matter what miter saw that you use. What's important is having a stop block. That way you can have repeatable cuts throughout the entire project. Because if you don't, you're going to find out the hard way that things are not going to be square and they're not going to come together nicely. For the most part, I didn't really care about the exact measurements. I just wanted things to be consistent. So when I'm making these cuts, typically I will make the piece a little larger than the final measurement, and that way if there's any errors I can correct for it later on. Let me know in the comments below, but I'm curious to know, do you guys like seeing all these shots where I'm cutting every single little piece, or is it okay if I omit some? Because I'll be honest, partway through I was like, you guys already know what to expect, so I kind of omitted some of the stuff. So I really love my Craig jig, and I get comments all the time about my Festool that I have in the background. And you know what? I use the cheap stuff, I use the expensive stuff. It just depends on what the task is. And in this case, pocket holes work great. They are more than sufficient for my needs. So I've already cut the top and bottom pieces for the drawer. Now I need to make the drawer parts themselves. And so there's just 4 of them. It's pretty easy. I think most of you kind of know what goes into it. But next part, I'm going to do the glue up. And off camera, I've already cut the grooves. But you can use a table saw, a router. There's a couple different methods you can use to make dados. Overall, the glue up went pretty good. I would say in the future I should practice this a little more, especially when it's my first time assembling something like this. But I just used glue, and you don't see me in this clip, but I did add a couple of nails, especially when pulling on it, give it a little more strength. And I thought it kind of went with the whole look of it, especially the pine, having that patina. And then I just clamped it. So pretty simple. You'll actually see this more in the next clip, but I used double-sided tape, and I put the two together, and I decided to cut off the corner at an angle. You can use whatever you want. I would say play around with a pencil and see what you like, but it does give it a little nicer visual appeal than not having it at all. So just cut to taste. Honestly, every woodworker should have double-sided tape. You don't need to have a lot of it. You can see it really holds it together. You need a pry tool. But I just used 3 little squares, placed them strategically, and it worked amazing. So all the edges are quite sharp, and I took an 1/8 inch round over bit and just smoothed over all the edges. Just that way, visually it would look nicer, but also when you touch it, it doesn't cut you, or it feels better on the hand with the 1/8 inch. I think in the future I might try a 16th inch, but the 1/8 inch is definitely my go-to. So we're definitely getting close to the end. I just, again, use pocket holes. Works really well. You're not going to see them ever. And they're quite strong. I didn't use glue, and maybe I should have, but honestly, it's not going to have a lot of stress on it. So the pocket holes should be plenty in this situation. As you can see here, I just added some little nails as a stop. That way when you put the drawer in, it stops. So a very easy and simple solution. You can also see some of the nails. Now the front nails are just brass. I just thought they looked cool, not necessary. And then the little knob on the front that I just used a hand plane to add a couple bevels. And then I finished up by putting some oil. So thank you for watching, guys. See you in the next one.